Having broken through into Silicon Valley tech giants, now Indians are hovering over the tech clouds in the US. Indians are filling the executive ranks at so many Western establishments like Google, Microsoft, and Adobe. A majority of Indians now raise questions about India's own technological ambitions, wondering why India hasn't innovated something similar yet. We usually say we are a country of 1.2 billion people, while the US is just a country of more than 300 million people, 30 crores. With such a huge population, why can't India create something as big as GAFA? Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple are collectively called GAFA. Well, here are the reasons that might clear the air of inquisitiveness and confusion. The first problem lays with an old saying that we are fed since childhood. That is, necessity is the mother of all inventions. We belong to a country of third world nature, where our problem and issues are thoroughly different as compared to any other developed or first world country. So when your problems are different, the solution has to be different as well, right? Having a population of 1.2 billion people doesn't make a difference. One can create the next GAFA is not possible that way. Solutions will be based on the problem that a particular country is facing, not the size of the population. This saying is not reflecting the nature of 21st century. How many of us felt the need of a QLED TV? After all, we already had a LED TV. How many of us needed PUBG or Twitter? After all, we had Facebook to waste our time on. How many of us needed a Ferrari when we already have a car that guzzles way less gas than the former? Necessities are not the mother of invention anymore in 21st century. This is a rotten concept. Corporations now create demand. Corporations build products and then turn them into your necessity. Smart corporations don't wait for the demand to rise. They raise the demand instead. Globalization in India has brought financial freedom among the people. With the arrival of financial freedom, we witnessed a tremendous financial boom in middle class society. They started shifting to upper middle class and the rich became elite. In India, startups only target the middle class because they are the actual consumers affected by any problem. That is the reason Indian startups like Zomato, Ola, Paytm, Flipkart became a hit. In terms of technology and innovation and its utility in our lives, India is lagging behind 20 years from the West and 10 years from China. Globalization entered the US in 1960s. It entered the Asian markets in 1990s. And in India, it entered in a new millennium in 2000s, which makes it evident that these superpowers are way ahead of us in development. Their necessities are our luxuries, which makes it obvious that their startups will be different than ours. For instance, when Apple started in 1983, we in India did not even have a proper electronics industry. When Ford started its commercial expansion in 1950s, India had just got independence. We could not have expected companies like ours out of our country at the period as we were trying to develop some basic solution for our poverty-struck country. But we were not as smart as the Chinese. The Chinese realized this problem way back in 1970s and opened itself up for the Western manufacturers and offered its land and labor to these Western manufacturer tech giants that helped China learn the global best practices which they are using against these Western MNCs extensively. I don't feel bad for our defeat by the Americans, but by the Chinese, who were worse than us. Remember, they were worse than us when they started, but they took some constructive steps when we were busy giving socialist slogans like Garibi Hatao. Those Americans and Japanese corporations eventually evolved to become really big and started expanding to other geographical boundaries to emerge as multinational corporations. It's not that Indians are lacking in skill set required to create billion-dollar companies. We have had some of the brightest tech minds in the world. They created global revolution, yet we failed. We failed because of not the lack of talent pool, but because we did not have the leadership with the foresightedness of his or her Chinese counterpart Deng Xiaoping of China. We too could create global tech giants, But keeping our market necessities and strength into consideration, we have created Infosys, TCS, Wipro, and many other service giants who write programs and codes for their Western clients. They don't innovate, they just write codes and programs. Another big problem lies with our acceptance ratio. In general, selling a product is tough. Selling in India is even tougher. New initiatives in technological sector were always lagging in India due to lack of early adopters. Do you remember MySpace? The huge social networking site that once upon a time got into scene ahead of Facebook. But MySpace lost big when Mark Zuckerberg introduced Facebook. Similar was the story of WhatsApp, which took off big time and overpowered Skype and chat messenger in a very short span. Few other examples are Airbnb, world's biggest P2P platform for renting homes. Snapchat, where primary chatting format is through pictures, and microblogging Twitter. Had these platforms been created in India first, people of the country would have been skeptical in registering them, thinking they would have to share their personal details or contacts from their phone, allowing strangers into their homes. This suggests that the acceptance ratio for these sort of products is extremely high in the United States than India, and we can accept easily anything that has proved itself to an American consumer first. Another big problem is quite big, or should I say the biggest. That is why and how China won the tech race. We have been hearing numerous times that if China can create large success stories like Alibaba or Xiaomi, why can't India create next Google? Well, the fact is, we too have the potential to become a powerhouse like China if things fall in place. But here, the government of India failed its youth. Way back in 1990s and early 2000s, a BJP Prime Minister Vajpayee as well as a Congress PM and an Oxford alumni Dr. Singh, they both failed the youth of the nation. When our startup started making little money initially, our government and tax department grabbed their neck and imposed angel tax and increased tax regulations and started investigation into their alleged tax evasions. Here I am referring to the Flipkart. These harsh steps by government and tax department pushed down the morals of the startups. On the other hand, at the same time, China was helping its corporations with whatever means possible. And we were killing our startups. And that was being done under none other than Oxford-educated Dr. Manmohan Singh. When Modi came to office, we thought he would support the startups and big industries, and even he tried and brought Startup India scheme and many other schemes collectively. But, a big but. Again, bureaucracy and red tapeism that Modi hates personally played its part. To understand why this is so, first, let's try to examine Startup India's actual impact on the ground. Since its launch in January 2016, only 88 startups, 88 startups hain bas, have been qualified for tax benefits. That's it, only 88 out of a country of 1.3 billion people. This is highly irrelevant. The reason for this state of affairs is the deeply flawed process that's been put in place to assess which startup are worthy of tax benefits. Each startup is scrutinized by an interministerial board consisting of bureaucrats, IAS officers, IRS officers, to see if the startup is innovative. For example, that means a startup which has to prove that its product or service is unique or first in the world. But if the objective of Startup India initiative is to give a boost to the new ventures, generate employment and promote creation of Indian intellectual property, then what's the point of setting up IMB? To be a major stumbling block instead of allowing the market to decide winners and losers. काहे को इतना bureaucracy लाए बीच में? Consider this scenario as per the IMB's logic. The following trailblazing startups would have been denied benefits if they were being launched in India today. Google. Google was not the first search engine in the world. Facebook was not the first social network. Apple was not the first company to make computers or smartphones. So bizarrely, as per the government's definition of innovation, that these companies would not be considered innovative and hence would not be worthy of tax benefits. सोचिए आपका Apple, Google कोई benefit नहीं देती government उनको. That's bizarre, right? We are busy taming the tail of our startups. Meanwhile, China is today eyeballing the United States because it can afford to. Simply because they got into the self-reliance, or as we say these days, Atmanirbhar China mode many years before the necessity of doing so finally dawned upon them. It is on us right now. Chinese government banned Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, WhatsApp, Twitter, etc., giving space to local players like Sina, Baidu, WeChat and Tencent to develop into billion-dollar companies. Due to their government policies, China is able to do few things. It had the foresight long back to figure out it did not need Western brands to dominate and own its digital and social media space, which was influencing common mind today even more than government propaganda does. With close to 1 billion mobile users, China actively encouraged and pushed its own versions of technological giants. In fact, the Chinese versions of the likes of Google, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram are more versatile as compared to their American counterparts. Right? The son is better than the dad.